It was raining the night they gave my sister the house. Not figuratively. It was actually raining. Cold, sharp, steady. The kind of rain that soaks through your clothes and your bones before you even realize you're wet. I stood on the porch, barefoot, holding a plastic bag of my things, watching as my parents smiled and handed Lisa the keys to what used to be my home. They didn't even look at me when they did it. I wish I could say I was surprised, but I wasn't. Not really. Somewhere deep down, I had known this moment was coming. Not the rain, not the eviction, but the realization that I had never really belonged in that house, that maybe I'd been fooling myself, thinking love was unconditional. My name is Margaret. I'm the eldest of 3. Grew up in a small town in Oregon. The kind of place where everyone knows your business before you do. My dad was a carpenter. My mom worked in a grocery store. We weren't rich, but we had a house, some land, a dog named Buddy, and a front yard that needed mowing every Saturday. I used to think that meant we were okay. Lisa, my sister, was always the favorite. Blonde, charming, a little chaotic in a way that people found cute. I was the opposite. Quieter, steady, the one who cleaned up after her, the one who stayed home from dances to help Mom wash dishes. I never minded. Or, at least, I told myself I didn't. That's what good daughters do, right? They don't complain. They give. When Dad hurt his back and couldn't work anymore, I took extra shifts at the diner. When Lisa dropped out of community college after 1 semester, it was me who found her a receptionist job. And when Mom cried to me at night about the mortgage, I gave them my savings, the money I was putting aside to go back to school. I told her I could always go later. Later never came. The night it happened, I was supposed to be off work, but Lisa had called crying. Again, something about her boyfriend, the 3rd one that year, and how he'd threatened to leave. She didn't want to be alone, so I drove across town in the rain. I even brought her soup, tomato basil, her favorite. I parked outside and saw their car in the driveway, all of them. Mom, Dad, even my little brother Tyler. That was strange. Nobody had told me they were having a family meeting. When I walked in, the house was too quiet. Lisa was standing in the middle of the living room, mascara running, hands shaking, but smiling in that way she does when she knows she's getting her way. And then Dad said it. We've decided to put the house in Lisa's name. Just like that. No conversation, no warning, no explanation. I thought I misheard. I looked at Mom. She wouldn't meet my eyes. She needs a fresh start, Dad added, like he was offering her a clean slate on my back. A home of her own. She's been through so much, so much. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there, watching them pretend like I wasn't in the room, like I was already gone. It wasn't until I asked where I was supposed to go that Mom finally looked at me. We figured maybe you could stay with a friend for a while, just until things settle down. I had no words, no space to grieve, no room to argue. Lisa was already walking down the hallway, giving herself a tour of her new house, my house, calling out things like, "I'll repaint this room," and, "God, Margaret really let the kitchen go." I left. I picked up the bag I had brought for her, the soup, the little cardigan she once lent me, some painkillers I thought she might need, and walked back out into the rain. I didn't have a friend to call, not one close enough, not one who wouldn't ask too many questions. So I drove. I ended up in the parking lot of the same diner I'd worked at for 8 years, sat in my car, listening to the windshield wipers, and stared at the building through blurred glass and low clouds. The neon sign buzzed and flickered, half-lit. That was the first night I slept in my car. It's strange what the mind does to survive. You learn to make peace with the cold. You learn that silence can be louder than any scream. That betrayal doesn't always come with yelling or slammed doors. Sometimes it comes with quiet decisions made behind your back while you're out trying to help someone else. Sometimes it's a house key you'll never hold again. The second night, I parked behind the old church on Maple Avenue. It was quiet there, safe, in a way that empty places sometimes are. I reclined the seat, pulled my coat over my legs, and tried to imagine I was anywhere else. A motel, a cabin, a different life. I kept thinking maybe someone would call. Maybe Mom would text, asking if I was okay. Maybe Dad would feel some kind of guilt, some flicker of conscience that would bring him to knock on my car window and say he made a mistake. But no one called. Not that night. Not the next. The silence was complete. I went back to work like nothing happened. Smiled at customers, poured coffee, took orders, laughed at jokes I didn't hear. My manager, Ruth, asked me if everything was all right. I told her I was just tired. It wasn't a lie. Not really. By the fourth night, I stopped checking my phone. I knew if I looked and saw nothing, I'd feel the same empty burn in my chest I'd felt the night they gave Lisa the house. So I turned it off, kept it in the glove box, out of sight, out of mind. But the mind doesn't forget. Lisa posted a photo on Instagram that week, standing in front of the house, holding a set of keys, smiling like she had won a contest. My parents were in the background, all of them laughing. The caption said, "Fresh start, you blessed, blessed." I didn't like that word anymore. A week later, I found out through a friend at the county office that they had filed the deed transfer 2 days before I was even told. It had all been planned. My name was already gone from everything. That was the moment something inside me shifted. Not snapped. No, it was quieter than that, like the sound of a lock turning from the inside. Something cold, settling where warmth used to be. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply went quiet in a way that scared even me. I didn't want to beg. I didn't want to explain. I just wanted to disappear long enough that when I returned, they wouldn't recognize the person I'd become. But disappearing isn't easy when the world still expects you to smile. So I kept showing up at work. I saved every tip, every extra shift, every single dollar. I opened a new bank account under a different name. Margaret was no longer the girl who gave up everything to keep a family together. Margaret was now the girl who remembered everything. Every slight, every silence, every door that was closed in her face. 3 months in, I rented a room in a basement unit, the kind with low ceilings and no windows. It smelled like mildew and forgotten things, but it was mine. No one could take it. No one would tell me I didn't belong there. I bought a twin mattress off Craigslist and dragged it down 2 flights of stairs by myself, set it on the floor, laid on it for hours that night, staring at the ceiling, listening to water pipes thump and groan like an old man trying to stand. I didn't furnish the place, didn't decorate. I didn't want to pretend this was a home. It wasn't. It was a step, a waiting room. I stopped answering Lisa's messages. They weren't apologies, just random texts asking if I wanted to come over, as if nothing had happened, as if I hadn't been tossed out like a bag of trash so she could play pretend homeowner. One day, she messaged me a picture of the living room with new curtains and wrote, "Thought you'd like it. Miss you." I stared at that message for 5 full minutes before deleting her number. They had stolen everything from me. Not just a house, not just space, but the belief that family meant safety. I think the most dangerous kind of pain is the one you never expected. I had always assumed betrayal came from lovers or maybe friends, but I never thought it would come from the people who raised me. the people who once rocked me to sleep, who kissed, scraped knees, and packed my lunches. And maybe that was my biggest mistake. Believing that love could be owed. That if you gave enough, stayed quiet enough, worked hard enough, you would be rewarded. I don't believe that anymore. I started keeping a notebook. Not a diary, just a record. Dates, names, conversations, legal documents, things I'd overheard, things I suspected. It wasn't revenge I wanted. Not then. It was clarity. I wanted to understand how long they had planned it, if they ever even meant to include me, or if I had just been convenient, the responsible one, the fallback. Funny, isn't it? How sometimes the person who holds the house together is the first one thrown out when it's no longer needed. By the 6th month, I stopped speaking to my parents entirely. I blocked their numbers, ignored the holiday card Lisa sent with the picture of them standing in front of the fireplace, the mantle I built with my own 2 hands. I still remember the text from my dad. "We miss you. Come home." No punctuation, no apology. I didn't reply, because I knew now it was never my home. Winter came early that year. Sharp wind, bare trees, the kind of cold that seeps into your joints and stays there. My basement room had no heater, just a plug-in unit I bought for $15 from a yard sale. It buzzed all night and gave off the scent of burning dust. But I was used to discomfort by then. I wore 3 sweaters to bed. I stopped complaining, even to myself. Every morning I woke at 5, took the bus to work, clocked in before the sun rose, poured coffee for strangers, listened to their problems, gave them refills they didn't need. Sometimes I wondered if anyone could tell I was barely hanging on. Not emotionally, but structurally, like a house with a cracked foundation, painted over just enough to seem solid. Ruth, my manager, started asking questions. Not intrusive, just gentle nudges, the kind only older women know how to make feel like concern instead of prying. She once asked if I had family in town, and I told her, not anymore. She didn't press, just nodded, and left me a new pair of gloves in my locker the next day. Black wool, still the warmest thing I own. By February, something shifted again. Not in me, but around me. Lisa had posted another update, a gender reveal party. She was pregnant. My mother tagged me in the photo, as if to say, "Look at what you're missing." Or maybe, "This could have been you if you hadn't made everything so hard." But I wasn't jealous. I was done being jealous. That was the month I met Daniel. He came into the diner every Thursday morning, always ordered the same thing: eggs over medium, rye toast, black coffee. Wore a dark coat, always looked half asleep. The 3rd time I served him, he looked up and said, "You okay?" It wasn't a big question. It wasn't even asked with much emotion. But it hit harder than anything my family had said in a year. I didn't answer, just nodded, poured his refill, and walked away. He kept coming back. Same booth, same order, same quiet. Sometimes he brought a newspaper. Sometimes he just stared out the window. I don't know why I started sitting with him during my break. I never sat with customers. But he wasn't really a customer anymore. He was a routine, and I needed something predictable. One morning, he asked what I wanted. Just like that. No lead-up. "What do you mean?" I asked. "I mean, if none of this happened, what did you want before the world got in the way?" It was such a strange question. I hadn't thought about that in years. I told him I wanted to be an interior designer, that I used to sketch floor plans as a kid, rearrange furniture when no one was looking, build miniature homes out of cardboard boxes and tape, that I loved the idea of making a space feel like someone belonged in it. He smiled and said, "So, make one." Just like that, as if it were simple, as if all it took was a choice. I told him I didn't have money, that dreams were expensive. He said, So was regret. I don't know why that line stuck with me, but it did. I started drawing again after that. Just little things, fake blueprints, room layouts, design boards cut out from catalogs. I'd never show them to anyone, but they were mine, and they reminded me of a version of myself that hadn't been swallowed whole by bitterness. I stopped looking at Lisa's photos, stopped checking to see if my parents had tried to reach out. I didn't need their words anymore. I had learned to live without them, but I hadn't forgotten. One night, I saw a listing online, a small cottage on the edge of town. Run down, but charming in that way. Neglected things often are. The asking price was low, suspiciously low, probably needed major repairs. Mold, bad pipes, a roof that sighed every time the wind blew. Still, it felt familiar, like something worth saving. Like me. I called the owner the next day, an old woman named June. Said she was moving to Florida to be closer to her daughter. Didn't want to sell to just anyone. Wanted someone who'd love the place. I told her I would. She asked what I did for a living. I said, I wait tables, and I dream in blueprints. There was a pause on the line. She said, come see it tomorrow. If you love it, I'll give you first chance. I barely slept that night. Took out my drawings. Reimagined the place before I'd even stepped inside. The next morning, Daniel drove me out there. I didn't ask him to. He just showed up outside the diner at sunrise and said, I've got a full tank. The cottage was worse than I expected. Peeling paint, broken windows, a porch that sagged like a tired spine. But I didn't care. I walked through every room, already seeing what it could be, not what it was. The kitchen would need gutting. The floor sloped. There were water stains on the ceiling and a hole in one wall where I think a raccoon had once lived. But it had soul. It had bones. And most of all, it had potential. I looked at June and said, I want it. She nodded slowly, then said something I'll never forget. Most people look at broken things and turn away. But if you're the kind who sees what it could be, you'll be just fine. I didn't have the money, not all of it, but I had enough for the down payment, and the rest I would figure out. Because for the first time in over a year, I wasn't trying to go home. I was building one. I signed the papers 2 weeks later. My hands were shaking when I held the pen. Not from fear, but from something deeper, something like disbelief. Like my body hadn't quite caught up to what I was doing. I wasn't used to claiming things. I was used to giving them up. But this was mine. The realtor asked if anyone would be joining me. A spouse, a parent, a friend. I said no, just me. She gave me a tight smile. The kind people give when they don't know your story, but feel like they should. I didn't explain. I didn't owe anyone that anymore. The keys were cold in my hand. Small, metal, insignificant really, but they were everything. When I opened the front door for the first time as the owner, the smell hit me immediately. Old wood, mildew, dust, the faintest trace of someone else's life. I didn't flinch. I just walked in, stood in the middle of the empty living room, and breathed. The floor creaked under my feet. The wind rattled a window in the back. It was imperfect. It was crooked. It was beautiful. That night, I brought a sleeping bag and a space heater. No bed, no furniture, not even a lamp. Just me, lying in the middle of a cold floor, staring at a cracked ceiling and smiling for the first time in months. I didn't tell anyone. Not Ruth, not Daniel, certainly not my family. This was something I wanted to keep to myself for a while. Like a secret garden I didn't want ruined by careless footsteps. The first month was hard. I learned how to patch drywall from YouTube. Learned what mold smells like. Learned how to scrub a floor until your knees go numb. I bled from cuts I didn't notice until after the work was done. My nails were constantly chipped. My back ached every morning. But the ache was good. It meant progress. There's something sacred about rebuilding something broken with your own hands. It teaches you to pay attention, to details, to effort, to pain. You don't just fix the walls. You start fixing yourself. Some nights I sat on the porch with a cup of instant coffee, wrapped in an old quilt, listening to the wind move through the trees. No cars, no voices, just the quiet hum of solitude. And it didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. One evening, after a long day of sanding and painting, I checked my email for the first time in weeks. There was a message from Lisa. The subject line said, "Can we talk?" I stared at it for a long time before clicking. She wrote, "Hey, I don't know where you are or what you're doing. Mom and Dad said you won't answer their calls. I get that you're mad. I'm not trying to make excuses, but things happened fast. I didn't mean to hurt you. I miss you. The baby's coming soon. I'd like you to be part of her life. If you want, no apology, no acknowledgement of what was taken from me. Just a soft reach, like someone testing the water to see if it's safe to step in." I didn't reply. Not because I hated her, but because I had nothing left to give her. Forgiveness is a door, and I had chosen to keep mine closed. At least for now, I kept working. Every day, the cottage became more mine. I repainted the front door a deep navy blue, planted flowers beneath the windows, put up string lights along the porch, the kind that glow like stars when the sun sets. One afternoon, I stood back and looked at the place, really looked, and felt something shift in my chest. I was proud, not because it was perfect. It wasn't, not even close, but because I had done it, me, with no handouts, no shortcuts, just quiet persistence and the refusal to stay small. Ruth came by a week later, holding a basket of muffins and a bottle of wine. "I had to see it," she said, smiling wide. She walked through each room, eyes full of that kind of warmth only women over 50 know how to give. Half admiration, half maternal pride. "You built this?" she asked. "No," I said. "I rebuilt it." She hugged me tight before she left. Didn't say much, just squeezed my hand like she knew. Like she understood that what stood there wasn't just wood and nails. It was recovery. Daniel came by after that, brought me a secondhand kitchen table and 2 mismatched chairs. We didn't talk much. We just sat, drank bad wine, watched the sun slip behind the trees. "I knew you'd do it," he said. "Do what?" "Find your place." I didn't answer, because the truth was, I hadn't just found it. I'd made it. And for the first time in my life, no one could take it away. Spring arrived before I noticed it. The trees outside the cottage bloomed in soft bursts of green. The air turned warm, heavy with pollen and possibility. My fingers, still raw from weeks of scraping, painting, lifting, began to feel lighter. I caught myself humming while cleaning the windows one morning, a habit I hadn't done since I was a teenager. Healing is strange like that. It doesn't show up all at once. It creeps in quietly, through tiny cracks you thought would never close. A laugh you didn't expect, a quiet evening without dread, a morning where you wake up and forget to feel bitter. One day, I found a letter in the mailbox. Not an email, not a text, an actual letter. The handwriting was my father's, slanted, precise. "Margaret, I don't expect you to read this, but your mother wanted me to try. She misses you. Lisa's baby is due next week. It's a girl. She wants to name her after your grandmother. We know you're angry. We know you feel we chose Lisa over you. Maybe we did, in some ways. Maybe we were wrong. I don't know how to fix things, but I wanted you to know the door's open. If you ever want to talk, love, Dad. I stared at that word. Love. Like it was a riddle I couldn't solve. I read the letter twice. Then I placed it in a drawer, closed it, and didn't open it again. Because here's what no one tells you about betrayal. Even when someone says they're sorry, it doesn't mean the damage is undone. A wound can scab over and still ache when it rains. I wasn't ready, not to forget, not to forgive, but I wasn't burning with hatred either. Just something quieter now. Distance, space, a calm I'd built brick by brick. And I wasn't ready to let anyone walk back in and shake it loose. Instead, I focused on the cottage. I built shelves, hung curtains, painted the back bedroom a soft sage green. I donated old clothes, bought a new pair of boots, nothing fancy, just strong, weatherproof, the kind that makes you feel like you can walk through anything. Daniel started coming by more often, not in a way that asked for anything, just there, helping when I needed it, carrying lumber, fixing hinges, sitting quietly on the porch when words felt too loud. We never talked about the past. Not mine, not his. I think he understood that some stories aren't ready to be spoken aloud. Not yet. He brought over books sometimes, left them on the table, titles like The Art of Home, Reclaiming Spaces, Designing from Scratch. At first, I didn't touch them. But one night, with rain tapping against the windows and the heater humming low, I opened the first one, started to read, and something unlocked in me. I remembered why I loved creating space, why it mattered. It wasn't just about pretty walls or matching colors. It was about control, about building something no one else could ruin, a room that felt like you, a place where the world didn't get to decide your worth. I took photos of the cottage, just the details, the corner where light hit the bookshelf at dusk, the hallway lined with handmade hooks. The backsplash I tiled myself, uneven but honest. I started an Instagram, just for me. No name, no face, just spaces. I called it The Quiet House. I didn't think anyone would care, but people found it, slowly, quietly. A few likes, then more. Comments from strangers saying it felt warm, that it reminded them of something they lost, or wanted, or were still hoping to find. It wasn't fame, it wasn't viral, but it was connection, and it felt real. One evening, I received a message from a woman named Caroline, a retired teacher in Vermont. She said my little posts reminded her of her grandmother's house, that she'd started baking again because of a photo I'd shared of my chipped ceramic mixing bowl. I think we need more quiet, she wrote. Your home feels like a place where things can heal. I read that message 10 times, saved it, printed it out and pinned it above my desk. It reminded me that what I was doing mattered, even if it wasn't loud, even if it wasn't public. Even if no one from my past ever said they were proud. I was proud. One morning in late May, I went to the front porch to water the flower boxes, and there it was, a car I hadn't seen in over a year. Lisa. She stepped out slowly, belly round, hair tied back, eyes uncertain. She didn't walk toward me right away, just stood by the gate, holding a small paper bag. I didn't move. Finally, she said, I brought muffins. I said nothing. She held the bag out awkwardly. I thought maybe we could talk. I looked at her for a long time, not with anger, not with sadness, just a stillness she didn't expect. Finally, I stepped down, took the bag, and said, You can sit on the porch. Only the porch. She nodded. And that's how it began. Not with forgiveness, not with hugs or tears. Just two women, once sisters, now strangers, sitting in silence, eating muffins that tasted like something familiar, but distant. I didn't invite her inside. Not yet. Some doors take longer to open than others. She came back the next week. Same time, same quiet. This time with a carton of lemonade and a small tin of butter cookies, the kind we used to sneak from Grandma's cupboard when we were kids. She didn't ask to come in. She didn't press. Just sat on the same step, sipping from a paper cup, letting the silence settle like dust between us. I noticed she wasn't wearing her wedding ring anymore. Her hands were swollen, tired-looking. She kept glancing around, taking in the porch railing, the paint on the door, the flower boxes, as if trying to piece together who I had become since she last saw me. "I like what you've done with it," she said finally. "The house." I didn't reply, but I didn't look away either. She ran a hand across her belly, then whispered, almost to herself, "I thought you hated me." I didn't answer right away, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I wanted the weight of her words to settle between us. Let her feel the silence she once filled with selfish choices and sugar-coated lies. "I don't hate you," I said quietly. "I just stopped needing you." That shook her. She nodded slowly, blinking fast. "That's fair." Another pause. The lemonade was warm now, the cookies untouched. She told me the baby's name. "June." I glanced up. She caught the flicker of surprise in my eyes. "Not for me," she said quickly. "For Grandma. I know. I don't deserve to name her after anyone, but it felt right. I guess I'm hoping a piece of her makes it into this child." I didn't tell her that naming something doesn't grant you redemption, but I didn't dismiss it either, because maybe it was sincere, and maybe sincerity, however late, still counted for something. Over the next few weeks, she came by more often. Sometimes we didn't speak at all. Sometimes we did. Small, gentle conversations about the baby, the weather, the price of groceries. Things that didn't bruise. She never asked to come inside, and I never invited her. And yet, something softened. Not trust, not forgiveness, just a loosening of the knot that had tightened in my chest for over a year. I started sleeping easier, breathing deeper. I still woke up sometimes with the echo of old pain. The image of my parents handing over the house like I had never existed. But it no longer clung to me the way it used to. Daniel noticed the shift too. "You seem lighter," he said one evening, helping me rehang a kitchen cabinet door. "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe I'm just tired of being angry." He nodded. "That's where healing starts." And he was right, because the truth is, healing isn't loud. It doesn't come with big moments or grand gestures. It arrives in tiny shifts. A conversation you thought you'd never have. A boundary you hold without guilt. A porch you choose to share, even if only in silence. One day, I went into town to pick up paint supplies. When I returned, there was a package on my porch. No note, no signature. Inside was a wooden picture frame, hand-carved, delicate. And inside it, a photo I hadn't seen in years. Me, Lisa, and Tyler, sitting on the porch steps of our childhood home. I was maybe 12. Lisa was 9. Tyler just a baby. I was smiling in the photo. Not politely, not carefully, but fully. The kind of smile that only exists when you still believe the people around you would never hurt you. I sat on the porch for a long time, holding that photo, studying it, not with nostalgia, but with clarity. I didn't hang it up, but I didn't throw it away either. I placed it in a drawer beside my bed, a reminder, not of what was lost, but of what I survived. That night, Lisa texted me. Just a single line. "Thank you for letting me sit with you." I replied, "That's all I have to offer right now." She didn't argue. She just responded, "That's enough." And maybe, for now, it was, Because I'd learned something in that little house with the uneven floors and peeling paint. Closure doesn't always come with justice, or apologies, or neat endings. Sometimes it's just a porch, a breeze, a quiet understanding that the past may never make sense, but the future is still yours to shape. And for the first time in my life, I was shaping it, with paint under my fingernails, with walls I built, with a silence I chose, not the silence of being ignored, but the silence of peace. Summer unfolded slowly that year, like a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding, finally exhaled. The days stretched long and warm. The garden bloomed in bursts of soft color, and the cottage felt, finally, undeniably, lived in. Not just repaired, not just functional, but lived in. Alive. I found myself doing things I hadn't done in years. Baking, just for the smell. Leaving windows open at night, even when the breeze was too cool. Sitting on the porch without a purpose, just watching shadows shift across the yard. I even laughed, out loud. Once, I startled myself. Peace, it turned out, wasn't something you waited for. It was something you created. Daniel kept showing up. He never moved in, never asked questions he knew I wasn't ready to answer. He brought over ice cream in July, helped me build a bookshelf in August. He once caught me humming a song I hadn't realized was playing in my head, and he smiled, but didn't interrupt. We weren't anything official. There were no labels, but we were something. A quiet, steady thing that asked nothing of me but honesty and space. The kind of thing you don't notice growing until you look around one day and realize it's all around you. One Sunday morning, I found myself at the farmer's market comparing peaches when I saw a familiar face. My mother. She was thinner than I remembered. Her hair had more gray in it. She was reaching for a jar of jam, her hand shaking slightly, when she looked up and saw me. For a moment, we just stared. She didn't cry. She didn't rush over. She simply gave me a small, uncertain smile and whispered, "Hi, sweetheart." I didn't know how to respond. That word, sweetheart, hit somewhere. I'd tried to board up, but I nodded. "Hi, Mom." We stood there for a while, surrounded by strangers and bright vegetables and the scent of sun-warmed fruit, and everything felt both too loud and too quiet. She asked if I had time for a coffee. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no. We sat on a bench near the edge of the market, paper cups in hand, and she started talking. About nothing, really. The weather, the neighbors, Lisa's baby, born healthy, dark-haired, big lungs. She didn't ask about my house. She didn't ask to see it. She didn't apologize. Not directly, but she did say this. I was wrong. Not just in what we did, but in how long we let it go without saying something. I think I kept waiting for someone to fix it, but no one did. And then, too much time passed, and I didn't know how to reach for you anymore. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. We finished our coffee. She stood, brushing crumbs from her skirt, and said, "If you ever want to come by, just to visit, you don't have to stay long. You don't even have to come in. Just know the door's open." I nodded again. That was all I could give. Because forgiveness isn't a door you fling open. It's a window you crack slowly, only when the weather's right. When I got back to the cottage that afternoon, Daniel was on the porch, sanding a piece of driftwood he'd found by the lake. I sat beside him, didn't speak for a long time. Then finally, I said, "I saw my mother today." He nodded, like he already knew. I didn't say what she said. I didn't say how it made me feel. I didn't have to. The silence between us was enough. It always had been. That evening, I made dinner. Pasta with garlic and oil, a salad with too much vinegar, bread that burned on one side. We ate at the little table he gave me months ago. mismatched chairs, a single candle. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't perfect, but it felt like home. After dinner, we walked through the garden. The tomatoes were ripening. The mint had taken over one corner. I told him I might start selling herbs at the market next season. He said he'd build me a stand, and I believed him because he never promised more than what he could give. And what he gave, steady, patient, real, was enough. As the sun sank behind the trees, I stood on the porch and looked out over the little world I'd built. The fence I painted, the lights I strung, the soil I turned with my own hands. And I realized something. They hadn't left me with nothing. They had left me with freedom. It had been disguised as rejection, as abandonment, as betrayal. But in truth, they had let me go, and I had used that space to become someone they never imagined. Not bitter, not broken, but rebuilt. The letter came on a Thursday. No return address, just my name, written in my father's familiar block handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper, the kind he used to keep by the phone when we were kids. On it, only 3 sentences. We're selling the house. Lisa and the baby are moving to Florida. I thought you should know. No love, no apology, no invitation. I stared at it for a long time. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. I didn't feel anything, really. Just a cold, quiet awareness settling over me. Like the end of a long story I'd stopped reading chapters ago. They were letting go of the house. The one they gave to Lisa. The one I had poured myself into for years. Fixing, cleaning, paying bills, tending to, loving like it would love me back. I folded the letter neatly and set it on the counter. Then I walked out to the garden, barefoot, letting the soil press between my toes. The tomatoes were heavy now, nearly bursting. The lavender was in bloom. Bees hovered lazily around the rosemary. This was my house now, my soil, my story. I wasn't angry, not anymore. I wasn't even relieved. I was done. A few days later, I drove past the old house. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to say goodbye. Maybe I wanted to see if it remembered me. The yard was overgrown. The shutters sagged. A cracked "for sale" sign leaned in the grass, like it had given up trying to stand straight. There were no toys on the porch, no plants, no music from the windows. It looked tired. I didn't stop. I didn't get out. I just drove by, like it was any other house, because, to me, now, it was. Later that night, I told Daniel. He asked, "How do you feel?" I said, "Like they sold a house." He smiled, slow and quiet. "That's all it ever was, wasn't it?" I nodded, because I had finally learned something I should have known all along. A house is only a home when it's filled with love. Not ownership, not blood, not inheritance, just love. And that place, it had never been mine. Not really. Weeks passed. Summer softened into early fall. The air turned crisp. I started baking again. Real things, not just for the smell. Apple bread, cinnamon muffins, a pie that cracked down the center but still tasted like peace. Lisa sent a photo of June, now 4 months old, chubby-cheeked, eyes wide, like she was always surprised by the world. I didn't respond, but I smiled when I saw it. Maybe one day I'll meet her. Maybe I won't. Oh, some stories don't need sequels. Ruth retired from the diner. We threw her a party, just a small one. I gave her a framed photo of the garden and a note that said, "You were the first safe place." She cried. I didn't. Daniel kissed me that night. Not the first time, but the first time I kissed him back with no hesitation, with both feet planted in my new life. I'd been waiting for someone to give me permission to be happy again, but I didn't need it anymore. That weekend, I opened the cottage for the first time, truly opened it. Invited neighbors, Daniel's sister, a woman I'd met at the market who said she loved the smell of basil. I lit candles, played music, baked too many things, watched as people filled the rooms I'd built with light and laughter and the kind of ease I used to think only belonged to other people. They asked about the house, where I found the driftwood shelves, how I got the floors so even, who painted the mural in the guest room. I answered with pride, not shy, not small, just me. After they left, I stood in the doorway, watching the last of the lanterns sway in the breeze. This was the house that betrayal built, but it had become something else entirely, a home, not because of who gave it to me, but because I claimed it. Every cracked tile, every crooked beam, every silence I filled with color. The version of me who once cried in a car behind a church in the rain. She wouldn't recognize this life, but I think if she could see it, she'd be proud, because she never stopped walking, and she never gave the key back. The first snow came early. It wasn't a blizzard, just a dusting, a quiet white whisper across the roof, the trees, the garden beds tucked under frost-bitten leaves. I stood at the window that morning, coffee in hand, watching the flakes fall like they had nowhere else to be, like they belonged here. Funny, for so long, I didn't believe I belonged anywhere. Now, even the snow felt like a guest I was ready to welcome. The cottage creaked in the cold, the way old houses do, like it had a voice of its own. But it wasn't the kind of sound that made you flinch. It was familiar, comforting, like someone shifting in bed next to you, not out of restlessness, but out of being alive. I walked from room to room, barefoot on the warm wood floors, ran a hand along the shelves Daniel helped me build, straightened a picture frame, lit a candle that smelled like cinnamon and fir. Everything had its place, and more importantly, everything had its story. Later that day, I opened the drawer by my bed. The letter from my father was still there. So was the photo of us as children. I didn't look at them often. I didn't need to. They were no longer reminders of pain, but of distance. A distance I had claimed, not endured. I picked up the photo, held it gently. For the first time, I didn't feel like the girl who'd been left out in the rain. I felt like the woman who had walked away and built her own roof. In the evening, I baked a pie, apple and cranberry. Daniel came over just as it came out of the oven. We ate it by the fire, plates balanced on our knees, talking about nothing and everything. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice soft. "Dangerous," I teased, smiling. He smiled back, then grew serious. "I'd like to build a greenhouse here, just a small one, so your garden doesn't have to sleep through winter." I looked at him. Here, he said, with quiet certainty. "If you'll let me." I didn't answer right away. I looked out the window, where the garden lay under snow, and thought of the tulip bulbs, buried deep, waiting for spring. "You really think things can grow, even now?" I asked. "I do," he said, "because you already have." That night, as we sat in silence, I realized something I hadn't dared to name before. I wasn't rebuilding anymore. I was living. This wasn't a story of revenge, or even survival. It was a story of return, not to them, or to what was lost, but to myself. The girl who was once left out in the cold, she was still here, but now she had firelight, and walls she built, and a heart that had finally come home, not to the house they gave away, but to the life she made when no one thought she could. And the best part? No one could take it from her now, not ever again,